Hello, everyone. Jim Coventry from RotoWire here, going over wide receiver targets that you can get in each round of your 2022 fantasy football drafts. So if you're at the very top of the draft and Jonathan Taylor's off the board and you want to go with a receiver, a lot of people are going for Cooper Kupp. However, I'm advocating going for Justin Jefferson. And here's why. Justin Jefferson has a 1,400-yard floor based on 2 years in the league, and he is still getting better. And the thing that's going to work for him is a new offense. He was held down in the Mike Zimmer offense where they were run heavy. Kirk Cousins was only throwing the ball, I think, an average of maybe 530 times over the last 2 seasons, was right around there. Well, now with the new offensive system coming over from the Rams, that could be flirting with 600 pass attempts. And Justin Jefferson is going to be used way more diversely than he had been in his prior times. We're going to see him more in the slot, in motion, on combination routes. Morning, Octavio. And so, yes, Justin Jefferson, we could see a massive season. And there's literally, aside from every player's injury risk, but his floor is so high. And even with Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson's there. They're going to siphon some targets off. So, yes, if you're picking very high in the draft, wheels up on Justin Jefferson, and I will take him as high as number 2. Definitely would do that right away. Now, if you're at the 1-2 turn, wide receivers, I'm advocating. I love both Stephon Diggs and CeeDee Lamb. I do have Lamb a bit ahead of Diggs on my board because Lamb is going to be the only game in town for Dak Prescott. And I am terrified about the Dallas offensive line right now. Tyron Smith's probably gone for the season. We know Lyle Collins, the right tackle, gone free agency. They let him go. Connor Williams gone. But the beauty of CeeDee Lamb is that he can line up all over the formation. He can dominate anywhere, and he'll be used heavily in the slot. He will be the player that gets open quickly. So if the pass rush is coming on Dak Prescott, it's going to be Lamb who gets that ball, and he has superstar ability to make things happen after the catch. He has those return man type skills, which we love in our wide receivers. So yes, I think he definitely competes with Diggs for that 165 targets, but Lamb could have a crazy target season. He could flirt with 185 targets. And so that's why I have him ahead. Also, the 1-2 turn, if Diggs makes it there, Diggs is always a great choice. He's had 164 and 166 targets the last 2 years. He has a great quarterback that throws the ball to him regularly. So you can't go wrong with either one. One way or the other, that's your 1-2 turn wide receiver. Sometimes Diggs doesn't make it there, but sometimes he does. I've seen that happen on occasion. But Lamb usually does make it there. So now, if you're in the latter part of the second round, early part of the third round, T. Higgins, a player I'm super high on. Remember, he had a shoulder injury early last season, and that shoulder injury not held him back. He missed a couple games, and he wasn't himself until like week 5. And yet from then on, he was putting up strong wide receiver 1 numbers. And he has the advantage of having Jamar Chase in the offense. They're 2 alpha receivers, but Jamar Chase scares defenses more because his ability to torch the defense. So they have got to be worried about the huge play. Whereas Higgins will usually see a little more favorable coverage. He can win anywhere, and he's so big against these 2 high shells they're going to see where they're going to drop 7 defenders. Sometimes they're going to drop 8 defenders. Higgins is going to eat over the middle of the field, and he's a big target for Joe Burrow. So I think that they're going to be primarily passive with those 2 great receivers, and I don't think zone defenses are going to be a problem at all because he's just going to pile up the receptions in this pass-heavy offense with a great quarterback and an improved offensive line. Michael Pittman's another one. And I know, man, his ADP has soared. He's up to wide receiver 9 now. You were able to get him like wide receiver 14, 15, like in June or July, but not anymore. Michael Pittman, huge body, gets open quickly, can make yards after contact, yards after the reception, but he wasn't doing that much last year because Carson Wentz was often inaccurate. Pittman might catch the ball, but it often didn't lead him into the yards after reception. Matt Ryan is very good throwing in that between the hash marks, and that's where Pittman's going to do a lot of his damage. And Matt Ryan's going to take advantage, and we know Matt Ryan will pepper his alpha with targets. Even at his raised ADP of wide receiver 9, Michael Pittman is a value because he has every path to have a great season, and he could be one of those 1,300-yard guys, and you're getting him still at a point in the draft where you could totally live with that. Now, next in the third to fourth round, Courtland Sutton's wide receiver 15, and I know that's probably higher than a lot of people thought he would go before the season, but I think a lot of people heard enough analysis to kind of believe that he is the system fit for Russell Wilson. You see, Russell Wilson ultimately has made his best abilities come out by getting the deep ball. He would buy sometimes, mobility in the pocket, and then he would throw downfield. Courtland Sutton is that receiver. And last year, he was coming back from an ACL. Sutton's had bad quarterback play, but he still had a season a few years ago where he showed he could put up elite type production. And now he finally has a quarterback. Courtland Sutton is not just a deep threat. He can win in all areas of the field. But I believe he matches perfectly with what Russell Wilson wants to do as an outside receiver and one who also can get downfield. So I think that is going to be the big matchup for him. And I think even when defenses, they put a shell over the top, Courtland Sutton's diverse enough to be able to break off routes and Russell Wilson to find him. But Wilson is his best to the perimeters, and I believe it's because of Russell Wilson's height. Being shorter, he has a difficult time, in my opinion, seeing just over the line into the short and intermediate area of the field. So remember, his success with slot receivers like Tyler Lockett wasn't short passes. They were when he went over the top of the defense. Well, Russell could see better there. It was a much easier throw for him. So Courtland Sutton is that stylistic skill set that I'm not saying Sutton's a slot guy. I'm just explaining why Russ can't see in the short to middle. That's why an outside alpha like Sutton works with him. So that was a good explanation, but I didn't want you to understand that Sutton is not, he'll run some slot, but he's mostly an outside receiver. Now, Allen Robinson's next at that 3-4 turn area into the fourth round. Allen Robinson, look, I know last year was horrible, but they had him under the franchise tag. He was never happy about it. You could tell he was checked out. And also the offensive system was horrible. And I'm sure Robinson was angry about that because they gave their quarterback Justin Fields when he got no chance to be successful. Well, now Allen Robinson is still young enough to be super productive. He goes to the Rams, and the Rams have Cooper Kupp. So even if the defenses wanted to sell out on Robinson, they're not going to be able to. But what Robinson does best is, Robinson's going to be what they call an X receiver. So he'll line up on the side of the field, opposite of the tight end, opposite of the stacked receivers like Cooper Kupp and others. And he will have to win on one-on-one matches because usually the defense has to come in. They either can put a single coverage on the line. The X receiver lines up on the line of scrimmage. So he's not getting a free release. He has to work his way open. But Robinson's a master at that. And even if they do bracket a player over the top of them, Robinson is diverse enough in his route running. And Matthew Stafford is one to not shy away from throwing the ball to a great receiver, and he'll give him a chance to win it. Robinson definitely has strong hands, great at the catch point, can elevate. And so he is going to eat in that offense with plenty of opportunities. So he and Cooper Kupp are both going to feast, but this is a great opportunity for the Rams offense and for fantasy managers to get Robinson in that fourth round. In the fifth round, my target is Hollywood Brown. He's going as wide receiver 25. What I really liked about the Arizona offense in the preseason. So remember when Cliff Kingsbury came in, they wanted to run the air raid offense, 4 receivers on the field. And with those 4 receivers, they basically wanted to run some vertical routes, and then they'd have some routes break off. But the problem they always had, they did not have the players to run that. They were going with maybe one good receiver, maybe a second. They didn't have the personnel, so they were just getting annihilated. Well, now it may take till week 7 when Hopkins is done with the suspension. They were running this in the preseason. Now they got Hollywood Brown. They've got DeAndre Hopkins in week 7, Rondale Moore. Hopefully they use him like they used him in weeks 1 and 2 last year when he went up over for 200 yards in those 2 weeks. Then before they started using him poorly. And AJ Green may be dust, but AJ Green is a 4th receiver. We can live with him as a 4th receiver. And even Zach Ertz could be part of that equation. They could split him in the slot. So Hollywood Brown is going to have a speed element in that offense, and it is going to be an opportunity to clean up on an offense that probably is going to be very explosive this year. People are sleeping on the Cardinals. It's a good team to stack in your DFS tournament, not DFS, but your large field best ball tournaments. So Hollywood Browner and all these questions, I'm going to get to them after I go through this part. So hang tight and I will answer your questions. And then Still in the fifth, but into the sixth round as well. Darnell Mooney goes on that cusp of fifth and sixth. Darnell Mooney's going as wide receiver 31. And I get it. Some people think he's small. They think the Bears are horrible. And I get that. Believe me, I get that. Darnell Mooney proved a lot to me last year. He was starting as a rookie 2 years ago, and we thought he was like more of a situational deep threat guy, go down the sideline to kind of win that way. Last year, Mooney was winning all over the field. He saw some heavy target games down the stretch too when Justin Fields was like cementing his way into the lineup and establishing himself. Mooney was winning everywhere. Defenses were focusing on him, and they still weren't able to stop him. Darnell Mooney is an emerging star here, not worried about his size. Some players, they transcend it. I mean, you think about Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks has transcended size, and so don't think Mooney hasn't done or won't do the same. He's a steal where he's going in drafts. Justin Fields, I will tell you quickly, what the Bears showed in the preseason was really important. They are getting him on designed rollouts, and they're not just rollout rights. Sometimes it's rollouts to the left. So defenses can't come in saying, okay, we're just going to flood the right side of the field, and he can't beat us. So they're going to confuse defenses that way. Now, what that does for Fields is when you roll him out, he now only has to read half of the field. The team designs 2 to 3 pass routes with receivers on that side of the field so that the quarterback can have easy defined reads. Darnell Mooney will always be part of that equation. And so it is going to work because the mobility of Fields has to put defenses on alert because he could take off and run at any time as well. So Darnell Mooney is just fine. Elijah Moore is another player in that fifth, sixth round range. And Elijah Moore, look, when you look at his season numbers last year, not very impressive. But if you separate it, the first 5 games, he had 79 total yards, I believe, off the top of my head, but that's really close. It was the last 6 games. He figured it out. He was healthy at that point, and they had 3 different quarterbacks he played with, yet he was still putting up big numbers. Elijah Moore was becoming a star before our eyes, but nobody was watching the Jets at that point. Moore is the real deal. He'll frequently line up in the slot, and that is some player that you want on your fantasy squads because that slot usage is really helpful because those are easy throws for the quarterback. Moore has ability to create after the catch. Elijah Moore, definitely sign him up on your fantasy squad. In the 7th round, there are 2 players I like. Again, you're getting a little later, so the quality, is dropping off. But Brandon Ayuk at wide receiver 37, here's what you have to understand. It is a run-first offense. They have a mobile quarterback. But even if they don't throw a ton, Brandon Ayuk is going to be their downfield threat. And in that Kyle Shanahan offense, they scheme the receivers in such a way to get them open. He just knows how to do it. He's been doing it for over a decade. And Brandon Ayuk fits perfectly with Trey Lance. Trey Lance is going to move in the pocket. He's going to get the defense on their heels a bit. And then he has a big arm. And that is where the connection works. We don't think that Lance is going to be greatly accurate in the short and intermediate area, but you have a little more room for error in the downfield passing game. And Ayuk fits well. So even if Ayuk is only getting 6 targets a game, if he gets 2 to 3 deep shots per game, that is going to calculate into some big fantasy points, even though he may not have the opportunity of some other receivers. And another player, I know a lot of people hate him, Amari Cooper is wide receiver 39. Look, Cooper is going to get at least 130 targets in this offense. Even if you don't like Jacoby Brissett as a quarterback, they are going to throw the ball somewhere. They're going to complete some passes. And Cooper is the one who is going to be open and available for Brissett, and he can run most of the routes. You could get him in the short and intermediate area. You can get him over the middle. They line him up as a Z receiver a lot, which means he's not on the line in press coverage. So the Z receiver has that free release, and that'll allow him to get into the sight line of his quarterback quickly. And then when, and I'll just say the other quarterback comes around in week 12, Cooper could completely explode in your fantasy playoffs for you. So Cooper is a player to target. In the 8th round, look, Robert Woods, wide receiver 42 per ADP. And by the way, I should have said this at the beginning. All my ADP data comes from fantasymojo.com. Darren Armani over there does a beautiful job with high stakes leagues. These are data points in the last 2 days. So it's the freshest ADP data that you would want. All right, Robert Woods at wide receiver 42. He has proven to be an excellent route runner, an excellent blocker, which I know for fantasy that doesn't do a lot, but he's reliable. And Ryan Tannehill is going to need reliable because they just lost Harold Landry on defense. And that defense, it's a big hit to their defense. And their defense was one that may have overplayed a little bit last year. This defense could force them to have to throw more than they like. Robert Woods in the 8th round, he could see enough targets and enough receptions to easily cash that ADP and beat it out with maybe 6th round value. But Robert Woods is a player that wouldn't surprise me if he came up with roughly 1,000 yards. If he got to the 1,000 yards, that would not surprise me if he got there. And his catch total should be fairly high as well. Now, let's go to the 10th round. So in the 10th, and I skipped the 9th, they really didn't have a great player to target in the 9th. They usually go for a tight end around that point anyway. In the 10th round, this player is very polarizing, but let me explain why I think in the 10th round he's worth it. Chase Claypool. All right, I get it. There's been some bad pub on him. I think the best thing to happen to him was George Pickens, because George Pickens profiles as an outside receiver. That probably moves Chase Claypool into the slot. But that's a big advantage. Chase Claypool is huge, and he can make plays after the catch. He is going to be catching the ball against nickel cornerbacks, tiny dudes. And so that's going to be an easy target for the quarterbacks, whether it's Trubisky or Pickett, depending on how they make a move with that. But regardless, that's a massive target in the middle of the field who has playmaking ability. And so I think those receptions really pile up. And Chase Claypool, though he's polarizing, he has talent. And I think this move to the slot, now he'll play the outside sometimes, but I think he's primarily slot. I think that's huge. In the 11th round, yeah, I'm on the hype train. Romeo Doubs. He has done enough in camp to make me think that he is going to earn some trust from Aaron Rodgers. Now, I know Allen Lazard's their number one, but Allen Lazard is a devastating blocker. He's so good at it. And they're going to have to use him there a lot because he helps a lot of the concepts they want. Doubs can come in and make plays in the intermediate area. And I think that's really where Rodgers is looking to make some hay. And I think that Doubs is going to step in. And even if he isn't starting week 1, I think by week 3, he will be in that equation. So they might be rotating things. Sammy Watkins struggles to stay on the field. Randall Cobb, to me, not really much of a threat anymore. He's just more of like a security blanket. So I think he's a great investment in the 11th round. And then in the 12th round, any one of 3 players that I like. Love Nico Collins of the Texans. They traded up for him last year, and they didn't even have draft picks. And they traded up the little they had to get Collins. Now, I know last year he was hurt early. The offense was a little dysfunctional, right? But now this year, I saw in the preseason, they're lining him up as that outside alpha, and Davis Mills was throwing the ball in contested situations, and Collins was making the catch, a beautiful touchdown catch against the Rams. I do think that he is a receiver I like coming out of college, out of Michigan. Wasn't a high volume pass attack there, so I think he got a little less publicity. But I think Nico Collins can win in single coverage on the outside. And I think he is going to profile it on a team that has to throw a lot because they're going to trail. I think he's an excellent pick in the 12th round. I also like Josh Palmer. Excuse me a second. So Josh Palmer will be the 3rd receiver for Justin Herbert. But what better place to be, right? You got Keenan Allen, you got Mike Williams, but Josh Palmer's going to get plenty of targets in an offense that's going to have to, that's going to like to be a little pass heavier. And so I think Josh Palmer, he could get you 750, 800 yards. I don't know how much more than that, but he also could help out in the red zone as well. He gets open in the middle of the field, and that's a time where Justin Herbert's very, very good and not afraid to throw the ball over the middle. So I think he'll mesh well. And then Russell Gage is completely fallen out of favor. Now, I know he had a hamstring injury. Thought right now is he's ready for week 1. They added Julio Jones, who I think gets 20 to 30 snaps a week. But Russell Gage is still going to be mixed in heavily there. And I think now in the 12th round, look, between those 3 receivers they already have, somebody's going to miss time. They're going to rotate some snaps here and there. Russell Gage, I think, is going to be just fine. He's a type of receiver that Brady went out and sought him. But Gage last year, Gage, in my mind, became a player. He's been around a few years, but he showed last year he could get open against good coverage. And so that ability now is going to translate to him and Tom Brady. And then your late dart throws. KJ Osborne. First of all, the Vikings are going to run a lot of 3 receiver sets this year, so he'll be on the field often. But second, Adam Thielen's been hurt a lot. And I think in this offense that's really going to execute the passing game, Osborne already does well just being the 3rd receiver. But if he bumps into the 2nd receiver role, he can blow that ADP away. Jalen Tolbert of the Cowboys is one to consider. up and down in camp, but for the most part, it sounds like he's been making plays and earning Prescott's trust. And I think he's going to be more of your intermediate type receiver. And with the offensive line problems, Dallas throwing the ball downfield might not be easy to do. So Tolbert may be in a great spot to pile up targets and probably see the lightest coverage, especially when Michael Gallup's on the field. Paris Campbell's always hurt. Yes. So here's what you do. You draft him super late. He's a starting receiver for Matt Ryan. If he comes in and does well, you keep him. If a week or two comes by, he gets hurt, not being used, you cut him, go to the waiver wire, move on. You love drafting a player late who you have a defined opinion of early. You don't want to draft that player you got to sit on for 10 weeks because you're hoping he pops in week 10 and you miss out on all the waiver wire goodness. Last one, Jamison Crowder has been buried in the fantasy talk. Isaiah McKenzie's been the buzz, and he's been, they're saying he's going to be the starting slot. But think about this. He had 2 good games, basically all last season. Every other game was like 20 yards or less against the Patriots in the regular season and against the Patriots in the playoffs. Clearly, they defined the Patriots were a slow defense, and they got the ball to McKenzie against a slow defense, and he shredded them. He didn't do anything against any other team. It's his 7th year in the league. Isaiah McKenzie has done nothing in his career. All of a sudden, he's going to be this fantasy superstar with Brian Dable gone and with Ken Dorsey taking over. Not buying. I think he's a situational guy. I think they want him to be something. I think they're going to find out very soon that the gimmicky nature of the play they're going to need is not going to help them win games consistently. Jamison Crowder does get hurt a lot, but he's an excellent slot receiver. And I think by week 3, they realize, oh, that failed experiment's over. We got to go with the guy that's going to get it done. All right. This is it. Now we go to the fantasy questions that are sitting in the pool here. Marty, taking notes. Good draft tonight. Anytime, man. Octavio, opinion on McLaurin. Love McLaurin. Didn't put him on my list because I had other players that I liked ahead of him. I am not averse to drafting him. Terry McLaurin is a little bit smaller, but he's proven he can win at all areas of the field. He's an excellent deep threat. Carson Wentz does tend to get the ball to his alpha very well. And I think that this is good. And he has a big arm too. Carson Wentz could drive the ball downfield. And Terry McLaurin, similar to Allen Robinson, have never had good quarterbacks. Now, I'm not saying that Carson Wentz is a good quarterback, but he's way better than what they had. And he can maximize McLaurin's talents. And I think it would be foolish to think these other guys who are in there are to McLaurin's caliber of play. McLaurin is a superstar, and I do believe Wentz is going to pepper him with targets, and so there's no reason to think that he won't come out and have a great season. So I have no issue against drafting Terry McLaurin. I think he could easily get you 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. That is very, very well within his range of outcomes. And then Z Smitty, thoughts on the 10 team. Let's see, you got Stafford, Mixon, Javante, Connor, Breece Hall, Gainwell, Chase, Juju, Godwin, Hopkins, Ayuk, Gallup. You're covered, man. You got depth too. You got depth at each position. You got high end depth at running back. When Hopkins comes back, he'll move into your lineup most likely. Yeah, I think you killed it in your draft. All right, everyone. Thank you for hanging in, and we will talk to you soon. You can catch me on Twitter @JimCoventryNFL. Good luck in all your drafts.